Hey, what's going on YouTube, and welcome to another Season 7 Champion Guide. In this one, we're going to cover Anivia, the Cryophoenix.
On my wings.
Anivia is a champion with a very high amount of crowd control, which is also great for controlling objectives. She's then got very high AP ratios, which when combined with her kit, give her some very high burst damage. She's then a very safe laner because she does have her wall ability, some pretty damn good ranges, and she can clear the waves really quickly. In a situation where she does actually die, well, she doesn't actually as long as she has her passive, which can bring her back to life. Anivia, however, is a very immobile champion that is very skill shot reliant as well. These are the two main reasons she is so hard to learn and master, because you do have to be landing those skill shots and you do have to position correctly. Then of course there is the fact that you can wall your teammates in a bad situation and get them killed. Of course, with poor walls, you can also save the enemy as well, but good walls can be extremely devastating. Since you have to go for a tier and a catalyst early on because you are very mana hungry, you will be rather weak, but when you do start scaling and you get your items, you're going to be a very strong champion. For my masteries, I like to go 18 Cunning and 12 Ferocity, grabbing Thunderlord's Decree as my keystone mastery. Just a simple Q and E combo will count as 3 hits and proc Thunderlord's Decree and is great to harass the enemy champion. Of course, whenever you activate your ultimate under the enemy champion, if they take 3 hits, it's another great way of applying this mastery. The rest of the masteries kind of speak for themselves, but I do like to get 1 point in the mana regeneration because you will have a rather high mana pool, and therefore that single point will be a pretty good amount of regeneration. For my runes, I like to go for Magic Penetration Reds, Scaling Health Yellows, Magic Resist Blues, and Ability Power Quints. This is a great rune setup because you will increase your damage by a significant amount with that magic penetration and your ability power, but you'll also get some nice tankiness from that scaling health and the magic resist. If you were against an AD laner, then you could instead get armor yellows instead and scaling magic resist. Those are great alternatives, but usually I'll just stick with the scaling health and the magic resist myself. For my summoner spells, I like to go for Ghost and Flash. Anivia lacks mobility and Flash will give you a reliable escape, and Ghost makes kiting a lot easier. It is worth noting that Ghost did just get nerfed, so it's not as strong as it was, and there's other viable options for sure. The first one is Exhaust, and it's a great alternative if you're against a high damage assassin and you need to block damage from an all-in. Now Teleport is probably my favorite alternative because it will give you some nice added map pressure. Even if you are in egg form, you can still teleport and save your life that way, so it is pretty damn amazing on Anivia. If you're against a champion with very reliable CC like Twisted Fate, then Cleanse is a great option as well, so you can of course break out of that CC. Heal and Barrier are options that can work for you as well, but they're not ones I like to go for. Usually I opt for the others. Anivia's passive is Rebirth, and it's great for its defensive utility. When you take fatal damage, Anivia will transform into an egg with 100% of her maximum health for 6 seconds, but she cannot act. If the egg survives, Anivia will then be reborn with its current health. So this skill is pretty damn strong because you have the ability to come back to life in a team fight even if you die. Of course, since you'll also technically have twice the health pool, it will take longer to bring you down in a team fight, and that can give your team some extra time to deal their damage. Now as I've said before, this also works great with Teleport because even if you go into egg form, you will still teleport, and that's also a great way of saving your life. Anivia's Q is Flash Frost, and this is great for its long range and ability to crowd control. On first cast, Anivia launches a massive chunk of ice in the target direction, dealing magic damage to enemies it passes through, and at maximum range, it will detonate. On the second cast, Anivia will shatter the orb, dealing magic damage to all enemies within the detonation and stunning them. Enemies' damage will also be slowed by between 20 and 40% for 3 seconds. So this ability here is one of your main ways of trading because as long as you can land this, you can follow up with the rest of your kit. It has a 1100 range, so it's relatively easy to do. This ability will also hit the enemy twice if you do activate the second cast on top of them. That's why when you combo this with an E right afterwards, it counts as 3 attacks and will proc that Thunderlord's Decree. Anivia's W is Crystallized, and it's great when used defensively to trap in the enemy or defensively to save your own life. Anivia summons an impassable wall of ice at the target location perpendicular to which she is facing, knocking enemies away from it. The wall lasts 5 seconds and grants sight in a large area around it. Although this ability is great, the only thing that scales with it is the wall length, so we only want to put 1 point into it early on. Regardless, it's a great way to hold people into an area so you can combo on top of them, or of course when you are trying to escape, you can block off a path so they won't be able to follow you through it. Anivia's E is Frostbite, and it's great for its high burst damage when comboed with your ultimate or your Q ability. When activated, Anivia blasts the target with freezing wind, dealing magic damage that is doubled against targets stunned by flash frost or recently damaged by a fully formed glacial storm. Now you can use this early on before your ultimate to help last hit, but generally you're going to want to combo with either your Q ability or your glacial storm. Hit your enemy with either ability so when you use your frostbite it will do double the damage. Anivia's ultimate is Glacial Storm and it's great for its high AoE damage and the fact that it can combo with your E ability. Anivia calls forth a driving rain of ice and hail at the target location, dealing magic damage each second to enemies within, slowing them for 1 second. The blizzard increases in size over 1.5 seconds, and at maximum size, enemies within the area take 200% increased damage and are slowed by an additional 50%. You can also reactivate this ability to stop it, or of course if you are CC'd, out of range, or out of mana, it will automatically deactivate. So this ultimate is great because it does only have a 6-second cooldown, and you can easily clear entire minion waves with just this ability. Activate it, wait for them all to be dead, and then deactivate it. It does also deal a lot of AoE damage, so if you can wall the enemy champions into an area and have them in this ability, it will do a lot of damage in a team fight. For your skill order, you first want to put a point into your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. Then we want to focus on maxing our E ability because it has the potential to do a ton of burst damage if we combo it with either our Q or our R. Next here we want to focus on maxing our Q because it is relatively good damage, but just not as good as our E. Then of course last that leaves our W, our wall ability. We only want 1 point early on at level 4 to wall people in, other than that, save it for last. For our first combo, we first start by hitting the enemy champion with our Q ability, reactivating it as soon as it's on top of them so it stuns them, and then hit them with our E ability. This will also count as 3 attacks and proc our Thunderlord's Decree, doing a pretty decent amount of burst damage. For our second combo, we first want to slow and damage the enemy with our ultimate, and then lock them in the area with our wall. After our ultimate has finally formed, we want to hit the enemy champion with our E ability so it does do that bonus damage. For our final all-in combo, we start the exact same way and drop our ultimate under the enemy champion and wall them in the area. You'll then want to follow up with your Q ability so you can stun them in the area as well and hit them with that E for that bonus damage, although you can also do that earlier if you do prefer. At this point, you'll just want to basically auto-attack until your E ability comes off cooldown, then use it to finish off the kill. In the lane phase, you'll want to play rather passively because you are weak early on due to you needing to buy a tier and a catalyst. Focus on getting as much CS as you can early on and try to land your Flash Frost on the enemy champion. If you land it, make sure you combo your Frostbite on top of it to deal a nice chunk of damage, but usually I won't engage unless my Flash Frost does land. When you're level 6, the lane is going to get a lot easier for you because you're going to have your Glacial Storm. This makes last hitting incredibly easy on Anivia, and when you do have your mana items, usually you won't have too many mana issues anymore. A good teamfight on Anivia can be as simple as landing a really solid Crystallize. You can use it to wall your enemies into a bad area, or you can also use it to protect your own carries. If you catch the enemy out, be sure to drop your Glacial Storm under them, then follow up with the rest of your kit. Next, you'll want to make sure you're in the backline unless you are looking for a pick, but make sure you don't get caught out, especially if your Rebirth is on cooldown. You can also use your Rebirth to bait people into coming in for kills when you have your allies in the area next to you and they can kill them instead, and you'll just revive and be completely fine. Also, I'd recommend not wasting your Glacial Storm. Sure, it is only a 6-second cooldown on an ultimate, but that can feel like forever in a teamfight. Now let's look at a couple hard matchups, and first up is Ahri. You're gonna struggle against her because she can easily all-in you. She does have that charm after all, a lot of damage, and of course, that really obnoxious amount of mobility from her ultimate. Against her, also try to make sure you're using your Q more defensively because if you do miss it offensively, she's usually going to engage on you and kick your ass. You'll want to farm this lane out and wait until you're that beast of a mid laner. Next is Lux, and I hope you brought your Nikes because you're gonna have to dodge all of her abilities. She does an obnoxious amount of damage when her skill shots land, and Anivia is most certainly not the most mobile champion out there. Make sure you're playing safe, farm that lane out, and make sure you dodge all those damn skill shots. Next here's Orianna, and she's easily one of your hardest matchups. She can do a ton of damage, zone you, and even her basic attacks hit you like a truck. Before level 6, this matchup is basically unwinnable for you, but when you are post 6, at least you can farm relatively easily. Yet again here, you're going to want to play a hell of a lot more defensively than usual, and just try not to engage her unless her abilities are in cooldown. Last here we have Victor, and against him, you're going to want to completely avoid him until you're level 6. He'll be able to outtrade you rather easily with the shield from his Q and the high damage from his E. This is, of course, as long as he's not eating your Q ability over and over again. Keep in mind when you're trading with him though that he is an incredibly bursty mage, and even though you may have a significant health pool, he will still be able to bring you down rather easily. Now let's hop into our item build, which starts with a Doran's Ring, Health Potion, and a Warding Totem. For your first buys, you need to grab that Tear of the Goddess and the Catalyst. These items give you some great mana sustain, which is really needed on Anivia, and of course they go into your core build as well. That core build of course is the Rod of Ages, Archangels, and the Morellonomicon. The Morellonomicon is an item you don't have to take, but I pretty much always take it in my core build. I like having that 20% CDR, and Grievous Wounds is just a nice bonus as well. Rod of Ages and Archangel's Staff are really solid items on Anivia because of the shield from the Archangels and that really nice health pool from the Rod of Ages. For your boot options, you have the Sork Shoes and the Ionian Boots. I pretty much always go for the Sork Shoes, but Ionians are a pretty decent option as well if you do want 10% CDR. For the item pool, we first have the Zonias, which is probably the best defensive AP item in the game, as you can go into Stasis, which can save you in a lot of different situations. Then of course we have the Void Staff, which is one I pretty much always grab, since it does have a nice chunk of magic penetration. If you're more interested in getting a high amount of AP, then you could go for the Rabadon's Death Cap. If you're interested in getting an even larger health pool and you wanted a nice burn onto your spells, then of course you could go for the Liandry's as well. Abyssal Scepter is then a really solid item to increase your damage, yet get some magic resist and cooldown reduction at the same time. If you're looking for pure defensives, then you can go for the Guardian Angel so you can come back to life, or the Banshee's Veil to block spells and give some magic resist. My normal full build though is taking that core, getting a Rabadon's Death Cap, and a Void Staff. You'll have an absolute ton of damage with this build, you'll be relatively tanky considering you are an AP mage, and you're going to be a really big time threat in that late game. If you want it to be a little bit more defensive, then usually what I do here is replace that Rabadon's Death Cap with the Zonias. You won't have as much AP, but you will have that overpowered stasis. But that, ladies and gentlemen, covers everything I've got for mid lane Anivia in Season 7. Don't forget to check out the video description below for a link to all my social medias, and we do also have a Discord, so if you would like to ask anything League of Legends related, please feel free to hop in. I do also do Ride Point giveaways at the end of every month on my Twitter, so that's one you should definitely check out as well. But other than that, thank you guys a ton for watching the guide, I hope you guys did enjoy it, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.